In the summer of 1984, a father and his teenage daughter packed up their old station wagon for a road trip across state lines. It was supposed to be a bonding trip, just the two of them. Hitting roadside diners, small towns, and scenic stops before she started high school. But somewhere along Highway 12, they simply vanished. No police reports turned up leads. No eyewitnesses came forward. It was like they had been swallowed whole by the road. The car, never found. The case, eventually forgotten except by the mother who spent every year searching, hoping, and refusing to believe they were just gone. For 16 years, silence, until one rainy morning in 2000. A local mechanic digging through a scrapyard stumbled across a rusted-out vehicle tucked behind rows of crushed metal. At first, it seemed like any other abandoned wreck until he opened the trunk. What was inside changed everything and reopened a mystery no one was prepared to face. Tucked beside the back seat, he found a stack of Polaroids, a notebook with strange markings, and something else, something that didn't belong to a car from the 80s at all. Was it a crime, a cover-up, or something far more bizarre? The truth behind the missing father and daughter isn't just chilling, it's deeply unsettling. And when investigators followed the clues from that junkyard discovery, they uncovered a trail that didn't just point to the past, but hinted at something that had never really ended. What really happened on that road trip? The father, Richard Maddox, was a well-liked history teacher in his small town. Quiet, dependable, never one to stir trouble. His daughter Lacey had just turned 14, a smart, curious girl with a love for photography. She'd packed her camera for the trip, hoping to document every stop along the way. Their plan was simple: drive from Oklahoma to New Mexico, visit some old landmarks, and camp under the stars. They left early on a Friday morning. That was the last time anyone saw them. At first, police thought it might have been a car accident. But there was no wreckage, no tire marks, and no calls from hospitals. The car, a green 1972 Pontiac Safari, was as if it had disappeared into thin air. Friends and co-workers were stunned. Richard had no enemies, no history of mental illness, no reason to run. Lacey's mother, Elaine, went to the media, handed out flyers, and spent every dime on private investigators. Still, nothing. When the car surfaced in the junkyard 16 years later, rusted and covered in vines, it looked like it had been there for decades. But the belongings inside told a different story. Lacey's camera was still in the glove box. The roll of film inside had been used, fresh images from places they were never supposed to visit. Even stranger, tucked in the back seat, was a folded map, with locations marked in red that didn't exist on any official atlas. Something had rerouted their journey, and someone had tried to erase it. Elaine couldn't stop staring at the map. The red circles weren't towns, they were empty patches of desert, deep forest trails, or places that didn't even have names. She took it to a local surveyor, hoping to make sense of it. He studied it for a long time before quietly telling her, these areas, they're known for military testing. In the 70s and 80s, restricted zones, off-limits to civilians. That only raised more questions. Why would Richard take his daughter into areas like that? Or did someone else lead them there? Meanwhile, the developed film from Lacey's camera sent chills down Elaine's spine. The photos showed a steady progression: gas stations, abandoned cabins, dirt roads. But the last few frames were different blurry shapes at night. Strange lights in the sky, and one image that looked like someone or something standing behind the car in the dark. Lacey had tried to capture something she didn't understand, and it may have been the last thing she saw. Investigators reopened the case, but many of the original records had been lost or sealed. One retired officer who worked the case in the 80s reached out to Elaine quietly. He said there had been sightings, strange ones, on the same stretch of highway that summer. Vehicles stalling, lights with no source. But every time someone filed a report, it was cleaned up. Elaine now believed the road trip had crossed a line it wasn't supposed to. And whatever her husband and daughter found wasn't meant to be found at all. Elaine followed the clues obsessively, convinced there was more than just a disappearance. The retired officer handed her an old cassette tape, one he had kept hidden for years. It was a radio transmission dated July 21st, 1984, the night Richard and Lacey were last seen. A scratchy voice came through the static. "This is Richard Maddox. We've taken a wrong turn. Something's following us." Lacey scared. "The sky's not right." Then silence. She played the tape over and over, trying to understand. What did he mean? The sky's not right. Desperate for answers, Elaine drove to one of the red-marked spots on the map, a remote clearing deep in the high desert. There, she found the remains of a burned-out fire pit, a child's barrette in the dirt, and tire tracks long faded by time. But the strangest thing was the air. It was unnaturally still. No wind, no birds. Just a buzzing silence that felt like pressure on her chest. That night, Elaine stayed in a nearby motel. Around midnight, her TV turned on by itself, just static. Her phone rang once, and she answered. No one spoke, but faintly. She could hear what sounded like a child's voice whispering her name. Back home, she found something chilling on her porch the next morning. A worn Polaroid tucked into her mailbox. Lacey, slightly older than when she vanished, standing in front of a building Elaine didn't recognize. On the back, in shaky handwriting, were 4 words. Asterisk, he wouldn't let us leave. Asterisk, Elaine couldn't take her eyes off the Polaroid. Lacey looked older, maybe 16, maybe 17, but she hadn't aged like a normal teenager. Her face was pale, expression blank, like someone who hadn't seen sunlight in years. Elaine rushed the photo to a digital forensics expert, hoping for answers. What they found in the photo's reflection changed everything. In the window behind Lacey, faint but unmistakable, was the outline of a man. Not Richard. Taller, with what looked like a long coat or uniform. And behind him, a strange, symbol-covered wall, definitely not part of any normal building. The expert cross-referenced landmarks and architecture. The closest match, an old military research facility decommissioned in the early 90s. One that wasn't listed on public maps and sat just miles from one of the red X's on Lacey's original map. Elaine was stunned. Why would Lacey be photographed there? And who took the picture? She contacted a former worker from the site, now in his 70s, who only agreed to meet off-record. His warning chilled her. That place was shut down, but not empty. Some were never released. Experiments. People, they said it was for national security. Now it wasn't just about a disappearance. It was about what the government or someone else had done to them. Elaine realized Lacey might still be alive, but trapped. And Richard. He may have discovered the truth and paid the price for it. But someone clearly knew Elaine was getting close. They were watching her every move. Elaine made the drive alone, just before dawn, to the edge of the old facility, buried deep in the desert. The gates were rusted open, the fencing torn. The building itself was mostly collapsed, overgrown with weeds and silence. But as she stepped inside, her flashlight caught something that made her heart race, a trail of small red ribbon pieces tied along the walls. Lacey used to wear those in her hair. She followed them. Down a crumbling stairwell, she found a door, still intact. On it, the same symbol from the photo. Inside was a room lined with old beds, notebooks, and surveillance equipment. Files with her family's name. A tape recorder sat in the corner. She pressed play. It was Richard's voice again. "They told me it was science. Said they'd let her go. They lied. If you're hearing this, I didn't make it, but maybe she can." That's when she saw it. A faded drawing on the wall in a child's hand. a son, a home, and a stick figure labeled Mom. Behind a false panel in the wall was a narrow crawlspace hand at the end of it, a locked door. Inside, curled up on a mattress, was a young woman, pale, silent, eyes wide. It was Lacey, but as Elaine rushed in, footsteps echoed behind her. Men in black uniforms, no markings, no words. They didn't try to stop her. One of them handed Elaine an envelope and whispered, "It was never just about your daughter. She knows things we're still trying to forget." Elaine didn't ask questions. She just took Lacey's hand and walked her out of that place, past the silent men and the broken hallways that had stolen years from her daughter's life. Lacey didn't speak at first. She just held on to her mother tightly, as if afraid the moment would vanish. It took weeks before she could say more than a few words, but slowly the pieces came together. She hadn't aged like she should have. Her time there had been altered. Lacey described long, dreamlike tests, odd lights, and voices through walls. She remembered her father trying to fight back, remembered him being taken away one night, and then never coming back. But she always believed her mom would find her. That hope, she said, was what kept her from forgetting who she was. The envelope the man handed Elaine contained a single sheet of paper, a government seal, a warning of confidentiality, and a typed message, asterisk, "Let this remain buried." But Elaine had already made up her mind. She contacted journalists, investigators, and even filed lawsuits.